Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Well, Mary Eileen and I are privileged to be here today as what we like to think of as the anchor position. As we come to the last in the series of messages, God is still speaking the 10 Commandments for today. Do not desire your neighbor's house. Do not desire and try to take your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox, donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. This is how the 10th commandment is translated in the Common English Bible, and we're using that translation because it's very good, very understandable, and because we've used it all through this series. But many of us know the 10th commandment can have slightly different wording depending on the Bible translation that we use. Some translations use the word covet, where the CEB uses the word desire. And while the word desire is probably more understandable, the word covet that is used in so many translations ended up helping me to better understand this last commandment. Now, I guess it's a kind of a cliche for a preacher to say, I looked it up in the dictionary, but I did. I looked up the word covet and learned that to covet is to desire inordinately or culpably. Well, that was a big help. But after going back to the dictionary and looking up culpable and inordinately, I realized that to covet is to unreasonably desire in a harmful way something that belongs to another. So this commandment is really a warning about the destructive power of desire. It's about the narcissistic need to accumulate property that is so strong that the lives of those from whom the property is taken and the lives of those who are bound to that property are not just negatively affected, but actually diminished. The people who first received these commandments understood that the main object of desire in question was the neighbor's house or estate. And that household would include the neighbor's wife, who actually was seen as property in that culture. Just as were all the household slaves and livestock, well, all the property of the estate. And from the viewpoint of today, we're shocked when we learn about that old cultural attitude about women. And I'm well aware that we could have an entire message just about that. And here it is just a few days after the annual anniversary of women's suffrage, and it would be a great time to do that. However, we're thinking about the 10th commandment today. So we'll just have to take on that challenge another time. But we can see from this short list of household members that are given in the commandment that many lives could have been radically changed. And with no guarantee it would be for the better. Spouses and children, household servants, even the livestock might experience some kind of life-altering change when a powerful patriarch desired the property of another to the extent that they were willing to just rip it away. I think we all know that this sin of unreasonable desire that is harmful to others is not something that has been left in the ancient past. It's just as relevant today as it was the day that this commandment was written. God's concern then, as now, is for those who lack power in those kinds of situations. They are the ones who suffer when the desires of those who have power and control get out of control. What are some examples of suffering that come from out-of-control desire in our world today? Well, one that comes immediately to mind is war. Your country has it. Our country wants it. We're going to take it. In this case, it's national desire out of control, of course, and we all might remember or at least have heard something about the wars fought by our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Now, my parents lived through the chaos, misery, loss, and sacrifice of World War II. And that was the result of a ruthless leader, filled with raging desire. It's hard to imagine that a previously unheard of German soldier of actually low rank named Adolf Hitler brought so much pain and suffering to the entire world, and it all started with the desire to reclaim national glory and recapture land from France and other countries that had been lost by Germany in World War I. But it didn't end with that coveting of land and glory. It grew to encompass such desire for control and power that he began to think of himself as if he had some kind of godlike power, and millions suffered. Well, that's about nations, and clearly an extreme example. But this commandment speaks to all of us at every level, right down to the personal, right down to you and me. What happens when we are not content with what we have and decide that we deserve more of what someone else has? What happens if we come to believe that what we covet, what we greatly desire, we are completely entitled to take? It seems to me that if something, whatever it may be, becomes that important, our experience of the nature of that thing can change. It, in effect, can become an idol, a false god. This commandment speaks to the idolatry that can come out of our own desires. It doesn't seem too far a stretch to see how that kind of idolatry might lead to crossing the lines laid down by some of the other commandments. And that's why I find it helpful to look at God's 10 Commandments as a reminder about boundaries. These particular boundaries are very important for us to know and to observe. For at our creation, God gave us the gift of free will. Free will is the best of gifts and at the same time, the worst of gifts. We are gifted with the ability to make our own decisions, either good or bad. And I think with the 10 Commandments, God gives us a list of boundaries to help us manage this powerful gift of free will. Also, if you look at the creation story, God formed us in God's image. And that God spark is still in each of us, waiting to guide us as we struggle with our free will. Using that gift, we can reach deep inside and find the hidden treasure of abundance and goodness and love that God has placed there, and let it be the food that fuels our desire, but a different kind of desire, a meaningful relationship with God and neighbor. But we'll have to work at it every day, for learning and keeping God's boundaries is truly a lifelong endeavor. Amen.